Hello, friends, and welcome to Doug Reads with Friends. This is a podcast in which I invite my friends on to choose a book. We both read that book, and then we have a conversation here about our friendship, about them as a reader, and about the book that they chose. If you have watched this podcast before, you are noticing that I am in a new location. Welcome to a hotel apartment in downtown Abu Dhabi. The conflict here in the UAE and with Iran, with the US and Israel has meant that our home we had to move out of on the NYU Abu Dhabi campus and move into a hotel apartment about a month ago. What that meant was inconvenience for us, which I think is a 1 out of 10 on the scale of ways that an armed conflict can impact your life when it comes to your city. We are perfectly fine. We are perfectly safe. Life is much more normal than not normal, especially because as I record this in the last few days, there has been a ceasefire, which meant that there has not been any more alarms going off on our phones telling us that there are incoming missiles or drones being intercepted by the UAE government. We are very grateful to the UAE government for keeping us safe and for knocking down all of those drones and missiles. And we're very, very hopeful that the ceasefire will hold and that peace will be on the way. It also means that my podcast has been interrupted. This is perhaps the most minor consequence of a war like this, the interruptions of a podcast. So for those of you who have been waiting for podcasts to come out, I appreciate your patience. I'm hoping to get back on schedule soon. On today's podcast, I have my friend, Jeremy Hornik. I think I have known Jeremy longer than any other friend of mine. I moved to the town of Amherst, Massachusetts in 1979, the summer that I turned 8 years old. Jeremy was one of the very first people that I met. We have kept in touch and had a very close friendship for now almost 50 years. I had that realization today as I was getting ready. 50 years of friendship with somebody. That's pretty amazing and remarkable. I always describe Jeremy as one of the funniest people I know, one of the smartest people I know, one of the best people I know. He chose a book, P.G. Wodehouse's Cocktail Time. I had never read Wodehouse before. It was a delightful book. It is a hoot of a book. We had a really fun conversation about it. So please enjoy this episode of Doug Reads with Friends as I talk with my friend, Jeremy Hornik, about P.G. Wodehouse's Cocktail Time. Today, I was preparing for this, and I started writing down a list of all of the ways that we have interacted and all of the different parts of our friendship and things that we've been through together. And the list was getting longer and longer and longer, and I was finally satisfied with it. And then 10 minutes later, I was like, oh, and Mount Holyoke College Summer Theater, we spent two summers together. And it's like, those are two really significant summers, and that's the 10 minutes later, I remember that as well. Like there's so many facets to our friendship, so many things we've experienced together, so many things we've done together. So is there a part of our friendship that you look back on as like either definitional to us or a thing that you remember the most, or like, oh, this is Doug, this is how we know one another or what our friendship's about?
As you say, there's a zillion and you can trace the threads in so many directions. The one at the center for me is the Stylin Mermaid Theater Company, where we did stupid Shakespeare out in the churchyard for a couple of summers, and it was just fun. It was a group of 6 of us. We were all pals. I think we swapped in a couple of people for the second year, and it was just goofiness and hanging out and doing bits along with the high culture of Shakespeare and the Revenger's tragedy and all that stuff. That's mostly what I remember, because it really sort of took over those particular summers. And it was great fun.
Yeah, it was a magical time. Stylin, and you get the credit for that, right? Stylin Mermaid was your idea. You were the director. You were the leader of all of it. I was honored to be invited and to take part in it. I think it was like the summer after my first year of college, probably like summers of 1990 and 1991. Right, we were both in our early 20s. There, like you said, it was a tight group of us. So help me remember. First summer we did Pericles by
Yeah.
Shakespeare. And was Revenger's Tragedy first summer or second summer?
I believe it was first summer, and I think we did Gulliver's Last Travels the second summer, and I don't remember if we did another one the second summer.
Yeah, my sense is it was just the Gullivers the second summer. It was basically a way for all of us to stay out of trouble, right? Like early 20s, we're all home from college for the summer. And especially Pericles, to me, there was something just magical about that. We're doing Shakespeare. Like, it was Shakespeare. It was like pretty serious stuff.
Deeply serious.
Deeply serious. But I don't remember, for example, for context for people who were not there and did not experience the glory and the beauty that was Stylin Mermaid, that one of the bits, first of all, there was a slow motion fight scene that just, I think I can still do the choreography of the slow motion fight scene to this day. I was working at a movie theater and Kevin Costner's Robin Hood came out. And we had big life-size Kevin Costner cardboard cutout, which was involved in the fight. Like somebody behind the Kevin Costner running around with this. It was beautiful. It was a glorious thing.
And I forever will associate you with corn because of that play. And I don't even remember why.
Because I went to college in Iowa.
Well, yes, of course. But you had a big shirt with corn on it and you were eating corn. It's like, well, I guess we committed to the bit.
Yeah, there was a million bits, but is it too much to say those were like the best summers of my life? I mean, they were glorious. They were absolutely just magical. Theater has been a way we've connected then. I mean, high school, we did theater together. 2 summers at Mount Holyoke College, summer theater when we were in high school, the 2 summers of Stylin Mermaid. You did a lot of performance and theater right after college. That was kind of like why you moved to Chicago. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically. I moved to do theater stuff and I got an improv and I did all the other things. I directed a couple of shows and then gradually found that I could make more money doing other things. So yeah, gradually it kind of fell away. I can very occasionally do some random script reading or something like that. But mostly, sadly, my performance is now all corporate and I'm just standing up in front of people and doing bits.
Can you talk a little bit about like 90s Chicago improv? There were a lot of now very famous people who came out of Chicago 90s improv scene that you were a part of.
It was a great scene, very alive. Tina Fey is probably the biggest. I was in various shows with her, but never for very long because she always had better things to do and moved on. Amy Poehler as well. Seth Meyers, I understudied for him at Boom Chicago in Amsterdam. And so he went off to do a show in Edinburgh and I actually went and slept in his bed. So I like to say that I slept in Seth Meyers' bed for a while. It was just a way of supporting each other and doing ridiculous stuff, but also like encouraging the free flow back and forth of ideas, learning to listen and support as well as just be ridiculous.
How did you get started in all of that? Performance has always been a part of both of our lives, at least growing up. As improv was not something kind of in the 80s, at least at the high school level, that anyone was doing. Did you start to get involved with it in college, or how did you really find your way into that?
Well, I was always fascinated by it because my dad had the Mel Brooks, Carl Reiner 2,000-Year-Old Man records, which are improvised, and, listening to it and sort of having it explained that, oh, they're just making it up. So when I was doing car trips as a kid with my dad, I just would make them do interviews with me as ridiculous characters. And I'm sure it was deeply tedious. I went to see a Second City show at Mount Holyoke, I think, where I got free tickets to that. I took classes in improv when I went to Chicago. In college, I went in Chicago. I worked as a literary intern, worked as a loose term because what I did is read bad scripts. Went and saw a whole bunch of improv back then and did improv and stuff. That's when I first met Adam McKay, who is now a big fancy movie director. If you are involved in a scene like that, you will end up meeting a lot of people who eventually become famous, and you will sit in people's living rooms and do terrible scenes in front of them, and they'll know all the terrible things that you ever did. So I can't meet any of them again ever, because it'll be just pretty painful. Yeah, so came back to Wesleyan and helped a founding improv group by coming in as the wise expert from outside. That improv group's name is Gag Reflex. I believe it is still going 300 years later.
Now, you also had a big interest in stage combat and trained. You did a lot of training in stage combat. Where did that come from?
Because some dude at UMass did an extension course on stage combat, so I knew some of it. And then when you know something and you're in high school theater, you will do that thing. So I choreographed some fights for that, and I choreographed fights in college, and I eventually went off and got certified as an actor combatant and have done nothing with it at all. You know, somebody said it's like directing a play, but only the high points, only the exciting moments.
If I'm talking about you to one of my friends, right, professionally, of like, oh, I know this guy, Jeremy, and the line I would use is an artistic director who helps design slot machines. Am I close? Am I right?
So kind to put it that way. I design slot machine games for video slot machines. And my joke is that artists are very good at art. We have engineers who know how to code. We have mathematicians who do all the hard math part and figure out the probability, make sure it's all correct. We have sound engineers who are terrific musicians, and I'm the one with no skills at all. Yeah, my job is to come up with the game idea, work with a theme or invent a theme, and figure out what are the rules of the game and how does everything work together, and make slot machines. And I have made a lot of slot machines. I recently passed an exciting, very exciting career milestone.
Okay.
I have been at this company doing this job longer than one of my newer coworkers has been alive. She was learning to ride a bike, and I made a slot machine, and she was eating her first solid food, and I was making a slot machine. And she went to her first dance in high school, and I was making a slot machine, just all the way along. Like, oh yeah, so many slot machines.
The timelines eventually intersect, but the slot machines stay constant. I think that anyone who doesn't know you and doesn't know your story would say, okay, this is a guy who did a ton of theater, a ton of improv, and now he's designing slot machines. Those two things are completely disconnected. I know the story of kind of how they're connected, but can you draw that for us a little bit?
Yeah, I did improv for a while, and then got a job writing funny trivia questions for a company called You Don't Know Jack. And it was a great crew, very, very funny, talented people trying to write questions about, like, if the planet Pluto was Mickey Mouse's dog Pluto. So I did that for a while and kept coming up with kind of new question ideas that didn't fit in the format. And they were like, great, terrific, thank you. You can't use this. Great, terrific, thank you. That one's not usable either. Eventually, they made me a game designer there. And I designed a completely terrible game there, and then went off and did kids' toys for a little under a year and got fired. And then went over and said, my friend is at the slot machine company. Well, I can do that, I imagine. Or at least I can get hired there, and we'll find out if I can do it. And, then I'll figure out what the next thing is after that. And so far, I haven't figured that part out yet.
You also, if I recall correctly, when you were at the company that did You Don't Know Jack, you were writing for a video game version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And the reason I remember this is because you sent me an email at one point and you were like, hey, could you take a few minutes to answer like 150 trivia questions? It doesn't matter if you get them right or wrong. In fact, we're not even going to tell you, but just for each one of these, there'll be 4 answers and you just give us your best guess. And I was like, sure, no problem. And what it turned out was that it was for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. If you ask the audience,
That's right.
You had to have actual audience members. So I am in the virtual audience of some 1990s or early 2000s version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, giving my best guess to a bunch of trivia questions that I probably mostly did not know the answer to.
You might have killed them. I don't know. There were some of them were really easy, so I'm sure you got those. But it turns out you can't just make that stuff up.
So Slot machine design, I mean, if you've been doing it for a couple decades now, it must have changed a lot. I mean, and I will say I know nothing about slot machines. I think I have once gone and put a quarter in a slot machine and lost my quarter, which is I think what it's designed mostly to do. Is there a way for you to begin to quantify how it has changed over the years or what the biggest changes are? Like if I were to go see a slot machine today, would I W I mean, I feel like if I picked up Madden today, I would have no idea what to do because it's so big and so complicated. Is that the
Mhm.
same for slot machines, or is it built to have an easy entry into it?
I mean, slot machines cater to the people who like slot machines, and they have been playing slot machines all that time. And so stuff has gotten somewhat more complicated in the way of Madden. But ultimately, they're very simple. You put money in and you push a button, and it sees if you won or not. And then you keep doing that, and eventually you either win or you don't win. And over the long haul, all your money goes away. Some people, it doesn't, or they get out at the right time on their progression curve. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. It hasn't really changed all that much in basic principles. It resists all the things that are going to make it clever, hooking it up to the internet, giving it, dynamic, giving player control. No, players don't want control. So it remains a very simple kind of pattern finding experience where you are just trying to give players a sense of possibility and excitement in 2.5 seconds.
When you're designing a new slot machine, what are you looking for? What are you trying to do with that?
It's very much like popular culture kind of design kind of thing. So, like if you're doing singles or a TV show or something like that, you are trying to do something that is novel, feels different, feels like its own thing, but also reminds them of their favorite things and is not that so different that it is off-putting or hard to understand. You want something where the player can sit down at it and everything is either very understandable or leads to an instant question of like, oh, interesting. How does that part work? And then they can resolve that within, $20 or whatever. So like, oh, I get it. Oh, if I get that at this time, this will be amazing. That kind of stuff. And, it's a well-defined audience. People know it well. I'd say the biggest thing that has come along to change slot machines is that we now have Nielsen ratings for slot machines. There is a company
Really?
that rates the performance of all the different machines across all the different games, across all the different casinos, and everybody has this information. All the companies who make it, all the companies who buy it, and everybody only wants the biggest hit games now. And so in that way, it's tougher than it used to be to make these games, but they're the same games, kind of.
So let's talk a little bit about family stuff as well, because our
Mhm.
families have been intertwined for a while.
Yes, indeed.
The word Rockababy means a lot to you and me, but probably not to a lot of other people who are listening to this podcast. So you want to talk about Rockababy a little bit?
I would love to talk about Rockababy. Rockababy was a summer hangout by a bunch of Amherst High School graduates who got together for a few summers in a row, and it started out before kids, but it really was cemented in when we all had kids, and they were all very young and adorable and all showed up at the same time, more or less, more or less. We would sort of go to each other's cities and we'd hang out. Grinnell, we'd go all to Grinnell and hang out there, and it was fun. And then we'd go to Chicago. I think we went to Chicago one time. We definitely went to Salem, and Vermont. We went up and hung out in Vermont a couple of times. And it was just very low key and easy. And when you have little kids, they need entertainment and they need a very predictable experience where there's food at the right times and all that other stuff. Yeah, and it was great fun. All the tiny little children being just ridiculously adorable is what I remember mostly.
It was glorious. There were about it's 5 families that would come together. The kids were wonderful. We also went to Puerto Rico. Actually, I think that was the
Oh,
last
yeah, I
one.
think that was, yeah.
I cringed a little bit in the beginning when you said Rockababy was and you used past tense. I think I still have this
Have hope
hope and
for it.
this burning hope inside that maybe someday like we'll all get back together with I mean kids are now almost grown, right?
Some
So
of the kids are distinctly grown. Some of them are less grown than others.
Emma, my eldest daughter was the oldest of all the Rockababy kids. And I mean, she's an adult now. She's out of college and working.
Yeah,
And
well, Emma and Molly and Jonas and, there's a stack of kids who are all through the educational chute and are ready to be unleashed upon the world.
yeah. And your kids now are how old?
Well, of course, Jay is 17 and into the rock and roll hard, and Adler is 12 and into absolutely everything for about 2 weeks at a time, and then switches off. Where, of course, I am not mentioning Donna, who was at those early Rockababies and died of a brain tumor when she was 4. And I think that also kind of brought that group together on some level.
Absolutely.
It's a tragedy and a terrible thing, but it definitely people found some chance to support us through community, and I think that community helped stay tight.
I feel like Donna's passing, and I didn't know, like, when I was preparing for this, I was like, God, are we gonna will we talk about Donna? Will this come up? Do I raise it? Like, but I also remember that at Rockababy there was this great strength. I remember Sheila, your wife, at one point said that she really appreciated people bringing up Donna because she said it's not like you're going to remind us we're not remembering, right? Like this is like the one of the biggest things in our lives ever, and yeah, it was such a horrible, awful time for people on the outside who weren't in your immediate family. And for your immediate family, it obviously was the biggest and the worst possible thing. But yeah, I think that brought us together as well with great love and affection for all of you. And then just the absolute tragedy of that as well. Is work and being a dad basically what takes up your time, or do you have other stuff that you get to think about and do too?
97%,
Okay.
98%. There's not a lot of other time right at the moment. Every once in a while, we do something. Sheila and I just went on a trip to Portugal. Hooray! Just her and me, which was
How
literally
about
the
that?
first trip we've done, just the two of us, without kids, since we had kids. It was pretty great. I gotta say, it was pretty great.
Kids are absolutely wonderful, but then also not being around kids is occasionally nice too.
Oh, it just makes everything easier, and I'm a very lazy person, as it turns out. You give me the opportunity, I will just go and get my coffee down the street in the morning and bring it back and sit and drink it and read a book.
That's a pretty great way to spend a day.
Oh man, it's terrific. Yeah, so we're just starting to glimpse the future without children and not entirely disappointed by the prospect.
So you just mentioned I'll go grab and read a book. I've always known you as a voracious reader, and your apartments when we were younger, your home now has always had books and just massive bookshelves filled with books. Do you
So
get
many
to
books.
read much now?
I read a lot less than I used to, and I blame this thing here. It just absorbs the brain in ways. I mean, I also have less like big chunks of time than I used to. It's shorter. It's hard to read right before bed because I'm tired. I still try to read. Goodreads tells me I read like 30 to 40 books a year at this point. It feels like a big step down. I always used to have a book or two open, and now I have a book or two open and it stays open for a really long time. And then eventually I finish it. Right now, I got the new Pynchon that I'm sort of slowly working my way through. And I just finished one of the Patrick O'Brien sea story books that was on vacation. That was very nice. And, this and that. But it's definitely less. I'm less tearing through them than I used to.
Remember, you mentioned Goodreads. You used to write a lot on Goodreads as well. If I recall correctly, you had kind of I'm benefiting a lot from Goodreads, so therefore I need to contribute to this also. Do you still write a lot of reviews on Goodreads?
Write a little something about every book I read, but it's a little something. It is not much. And I've basically said to myself, all you want to do is be able to remember which of the Elmore Leonard books this was, and should I read it again? So it's generally just a few words just to remind myself whether I liked it or not. I still use it as like a book recommendation service, particularly for the good trashy books that won't necessarily come across your transom any other way. If somebody reads a really good trashy thriller and it's like, this was awesome, I'm like, okay, set me up right now, because that is fun and I like fun.
Do you reread books much? You mentioned just a moment ago, like, oh, I need to remind myself whether or not I want to reread this in the future.
There's definitely a few books that I'll reread over and over again. Master and Margarita back from Russian class in high school.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I
Didn't think about
yeah,
Russian class now, did you?
that way Russian class was not on the list of ways in which you and I no, shout out to Jude Wopst in the 1980s.
Master and Margarita, certain mystery novels that I think are really good. Books by George Higgins, Patrick O'Brien's I will reread, but not on purpose. It's just because I forgot that I read that one, and I haven't gone about it in any particular order. Mostly I tend towards, wow, this was neat. How did they achieve these effects? How do they get this going? The art, what's the artistry there? I could reread the Parker books by Richard Stark, Donald Westlake, over and over and over and over again, because they're so formulaic and so well done, and he manages to crack his formula in new ways every single time he does it, and they're just fascinating.
Would you ever write a book? I mean, you're a very, very creative guy, a very, very smart guy. I mean, you use slot machines now as a creative outlet. Would you ever tease that idea?
I think that if I had a more boring job, I probably would have a book written by now. And I made the mistake early on of having sort of interesting jobs, which use creativity and push that forward. But it definitely pulls that energy out of you, and then there's not as much left for your own stuff. All the way back at Jellyvision. When we started at Jellyvision, we had all kinds of little side projects going on, and gradually those went away just because that is your full-time gig, and you're doing that 40 hours a week. At some point you have to do dumb stuff like watch movies and cook food and things like that. That's my suspicion, that if I had less interesting jobs, I would have more personal creative output. And I'd like to get back to it. But the truth is, I do bits of writing every now and again, and it's like once every couple of months, and I'll write 3 pages, and that's that. You need to sustain it.
So let's talk about the book that you chose for us to read. Yeah, so what are you holding there? What book did we read?
This is P.G. Wodehouse, Cocktail Time. And why did I pick this book? Because one of our favorite people in the world, Bethany Schneider, told me that this was the best Wodehouse and her favorite book. I don't know that it is actually her favorite book. She reads a zillion books. And is
she's a certified
person.
tenured English professor. It's her job to read a lot of books.
And novelist. But I love P.G. Wodehouse. I have always loved P.G. Wodehouse. And I got this, and it sort of sat on my shelves for a while because I am very slow at reading books. So then I was like, this will be perfect. I want a book I know I will read, that I won't get distracted by, but also that is not too long and relatively pleasant. So this one came up and was perfect. I love Wodehouse. He is the funniest writer to me, and it just so much his own thing. Like there's a Wodehouse universe that is connected, unlike any other writer's work. It's full of just idiot lords and smart servants and big country houses and clubs and people, having fancy cocktails, and none of it matters in any particular way. Like there is not, he wrote, let's say 3,000 books. There, if you go through them, there is not one piece of socially relevant stuff in any of them. There's not one,
They're just for fun.
He was writing from the 30s to the 60s and 70s, maybe even the 20s. And, some stuff happened during those years.
there were events.
Specifically to England.
Yeah.
A little bit of this and that. And somehow you would never know. You just have no idea.
Do we need a greater description of what this book is, or is that kind of general Woodhouseian idea enough, do you think, if anyone doesn't know this book and is interested in it?
I can give a very short plot summary and try not to get into the weeds because
there's a lot of weeds.
It's just weeds. The book is weeds.
Mostly weeds.
It's 90% weeds. So we'd call him, I think, the main character, but I think you could also call him the instigating character, is Lord Ickenham, who is a rich and chaotic individual, and he is looking out the window of his son's club. Nephew.
Yeah.
Nephew's club. There's no sons. It's all nephews in Wodehouse. And they see a jerk coming along in a big top hat, and Ickenham decides to shoot it off with a Brazil nut, which makes this guy, who it turns out is well known to Ickenham, Beefy, Raymond Beefy Bastable. He decides that he's going to write a book about how terrible the modern youths are because of this humiliating incident that happened outside his club. And he writes the book, and it is a massive success. And he realizes he must do it anonymously because he has hopes to join the House of Commons, and they will be appalled at an author in there of such popular trash. And so then the blackmail starts, and it just goes on from there.
I kept writing down the word romp throughout reading this. Like, just, it's so fast paced. It's like you said, it's all weeds. The chapters are short, huge cast of characters. I kept having to wait, who is this, and how do they know, and how?
Why is it that this one can't get married?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
And wait, this one needs 500 pounds, or this one has 500 pounds, and obviously is going to end up transferring from this person to that person. And wait, why are they stealing this oak cabinet again? And who has the letter? And what does the letter say? Like, I don't care. I'm just it was so funny and such just a hoot and a romp. And like you said, it's not, is it an important book? I mean, it's no, it's not saying great things about our time. Is it fun? It is an absolute blast to read.
And I count me in that group of people who believe that importance in literature is overrated. In my opinion, there is something really valuable about pure entertainment, things that are purely delightful just on their own merits. And there's also merit in taking things seriously, but I feel like things that are glorious and entertaining and hilarious and do not demand a serious approach as you're thinking about them just have like a shining merit of their own. There's a star, they gleam, they shine, they are beautiful. And they do not need to be justified in any kind of important way because they're glorious and perfect and really underrated in how hard they are to make. No one can write like Wodehouse. Nobody can do it.
I absolutely agree. And I mean, what that actually makes me think about is circling back to the very start of this conversation and Stylin Mermaid, that we were talking about how glorious and wonderful and unserious, making Shakespeare goofy, right? And bringing Kevin Costner's cutouts into it. But the glory and the beauty and how much fun that was and how much we enjoyed that and how much clearly that meant to both of us here, 35 years later, is massively important to both of us. And yeah, I wouldn't say, maybe I said unimportant, and I should take that back. But yeah, it's so much fun. Just an absolute blast to read this book.
Unimportant is the key. Unimportant means you don't have to treat it seriously. Like if I am reading this book and I have to give it up because the city I'm living in is being shelled and, my country is doing terrible things or whatever, and you put it down and then you pick it back up when you have time for it again, it's just as delightful. It has not lost any of its perfection in the time when real life has intruded. You don't rethink your approach to it. I'm sure there are things that can make people rethink their approach to Wodehouse, but basically it's this weird little perfect gemstone that doesn't fit in anywhere. It's just its own little thing and it floats out there. The prose, the jokes, his way of dropping in a deep classical reference out of nowhere in the dumbest situations.
The repeated jokes to me in this book, whether it was Ecclesiastes, the U.S. Marine Corps, Roget's Thesaurus.
Yes.
And again and again and again, and to the point of inanity, but also hilarity throughout the entire thing.
It's a masterwork both in joke structure and callbacks and how to set that up going, but also it's rewarding to the reader who is sticking through this little thing, and each one is a little ladder rung that you can pull yourself up on and get to the next thing. He just moves you along through. I'm not as voracious a reader as once I was, and I definitely am a slower getting througher of things, but I find that I have to take breaks with Wodehouse because it's so good and so light that if I try to power through the whole book, it's like trying to eat an entire souffle at once. You're just like, whoa, what have I done to myself? Like you want one slice and then you eat it and you're like, that was perfect. And you put it down for a while and you pick it back up and you're like, another slice, please.
I found that there were times when I was like, all right, I've got some time to read right now. And then I realized I didn't have enough energy to pick up this book. Like it takes effort. Buckle your seatbelt. Here we
Mhm.
go. We're on the romp again.
It demands a certain attentive reading. Like you can't have this open and a TV show going on at the same times or droning in the background and so forth, because the jokes, they're very dry, they're very subtle, except of course when a guy gets chased into a pond by a swan. That's more of a like big fat joke. So much is just on this very delicate tone and the way a sentence is written that you have to pay attention to it and you have to kind of enjoy it on its own merits. You have to drop into that world.
I asked you to think about maybe if there's something you wanted to read from this to give people who are listening a sense of the language and how it works. Was there something from this that you wanted to read?
I would be happy to. We're introducing a character named Nanny Bruce here. And Nanny Bruce is the long-term servant of one of the lesser characters. You said there are a lot of characters in this book. There's a lot of characters, and they all have servants who are also characters. Nanny Bruce, a tall, gangling, light heavyweight, with a suggestion in her appearance of a private in the Grenadiers dressed up to play the title role in Charlie's Aunt, was one of those doggedly faithful retainers who adhere to almost all old families like barnacles to the hulls of ships. As what she called a slip of a girl, though it was difficult, seeing her now, to believe that she'd ever had a girlish sliphood, she had come to Hammer Hall to act as nurse to the infant Johnny. By the time he went off to his first school, and the need for her services might have been supposed to have ceased, the idea of dispensing with them had become an idle dream. She was as much a fixture as the stone lions on the gates or the funny smell in the attic. Beautiful. Just, this is a very Wodehouse structure here. As what she called a slip of a girl, though it was difficult seeing her now to believe that she'd ever had a girlish sliphood. Girlish sliphood is like, that only makes sense in the context of that sentence, and it is both a funny idea, like, I can't imagine that she was ever very small, expressed in a way that's weirdly complicated and twisted so that you have to read it slow. You have to think it through. And if you eat too many of those in one sitting, you will have a stomachache.
And yet completely understandable as well.
In that context, it is complete girlish sliphood. It just pulls itself forward in the most wonderful ways. Again, that also comes to callbacks. There was a very long section that I wanted to read, and I was like, it's a podcast, man, where it's one of the other many characters getting chased by a swan on a small island in the middle of a pond, and he runs to the shore, and his emotions there are described as being like Xenophon in the 10,000 when they reach the beach to realize that there are no ships to take them back to Greece, which is a perfect metaphor for the situation in history. Absurd because we're talking about a man getting chased by a swan, but also like it's elevating and deflating all at once. And it's so literate and so much depends on having read other books and being in this kind of world of that. And it's just so funny. It is so funny.
Yeah.
You have to get the joke. If you don't know who Xenophon is, you're like, well, I guess I'll go to Wikipedia. Huh. Okay. All right. As a man who has Xenophon's Anabasis up in his library right now, I appreciated it. I think he wrote that one for me.
Yeah, I was on Wikipedia. I didn't get it.
Yeah, it's a good one. Trust me.
It's a banger.
You just gotta, have read Xenophon maybe 20 years ago. And Xenophon was a Greek general who wrote a great story about his memoir about invading Persia. It doesn't go well, and the army makes its way back to Greece, having been shattered and in different pieces, and it's all terrible. And
All right, that's enough souffle for me then.
I know, and you're like, wait, did he just reference Xenophon? Because it is the perfect reference. He references a lot of Tennyson and other British poets who I know nothing about, and that I would absolutely have to go to the books for, and I don't because I'm lazy. Even if you don't get all the references, you get that there was a reference made, and you're like, boy, wow, we have just referenced some. It gives you just enough to understand what it is that he's doing. And if you know
Right.
what he's doing, it's even better. But he's so great at dropping those in without being alienating about it. You could see a book in which that kind of reference was made, and it is,
Absolutely.
like, oh, well, if you don't get this, you're going to lose this terrific joke. But no, there's a man being chased by a swan, an angry swan. Well, he's trying to dig up a letter? I don't remember. Anyhow, it is ridiculous. So out he goes.
So, Jared, we need to start to wrap up. It has been far, 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 far too long since we got to see one another.
Yes, indeed.
As you know, one of the things that I do on the podcast is try to imagine where and how we might meet, perhaps with some piece of this. I've got some ideas. What do you
Lay
think?
the first one on us. I can riff all day.
I kept thinking that this would be a spectacular play. And I could see this at Mount Holyoke College Summer Theater, a summer British farce. So, we've made theater together in the past. I think we should produce, I don't know if it's ever been done as a play, but I think we should do a play of Cocktail Time. Bethany can join us for sure.
Absolutely.
Back with Stylin Mermaid. So maybe this is a third summer of Stylin Mermaid that we do a performance of Cocktail Time. What do you think?
Shave my beard and mustache and be the beefy, angry Raymond Bastable. Yeah, no, that's terrific. That's a great idea. I was much less deep on yours, and I just thought, oh well, we got to meet in London because it's kind of halfway, and then wander around and try and find a gentleman's club to have people shoot Brazil nuts at us from. You can never quite get into the Woodehouse's world because it's imaginary in the best of all possible ways, but you can get near it.
Jared, thanks so much. Almost 50 years of friendship. I appreciate you so much and adore you as a friend and one of the funniest, smartest people that I have ever come across in my entire life. And really, really appreciate you doing this. You chose a marvelous book, and just thanks so much for coming on the podcast, and thanks for being my friend.
You are so welcome, and thank you so much for inviting me. If we can't hang out, at least we can do this.
Oh, man. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, choosing a great book, and for being my friend. That was so much fun for me. Jeremy and I do not talk nearly enough, some with whom I have decades and decades and decades of shared experience, so many memories, so many things that we've done together. And it was really wonderful to reconnect with him, to have a conversation about a book, relive some of those things that we've done, learn a little bit about him. I really, really had fun with that. I hope that you enjoyed listening to that conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. For the next episode of Doug Reads with Friends, I am going to be talking with Tammy Draughon about the book, The Longest Race. Tammy and I met in the late 90s when we were both teachers at Enloe High School in Raleigh, North Carolina. She was a physics teacher. I was a social studies teacher. We had a lot of the same students in common. Tammy continues to be a teacher in California, where she is also an amazing cross-country and track coach. She has been the California State Cross-Country Coach of the Year. And the book that she chose, The Longest Race, is about the Oregon Project and the problems with the Oregon Project and the sexism and destruction that Alberto Salazar and that project caused. Really interesting book, great conversation. When are you going to hear it? That's a great question. I don't know yet. I'm hoping early May. That's the goal. We will see. Again, thank you for hanging in there with me as I work through my production schedule on this podcast. If you have feedback on the podcast, please go ahead and email me at dougreadswithfriends@gmail.com. I'm on social media. We've got a Facebook page. We've got an Instagram page. We've got a TikTok page on which I post clips. Music for Doug Reads with Friends is provided by my friend, Erin Caffel, a deeply talented musician and author. She's had 2 books out already. Please support Erin's music. I'm deeply grateful to her for allowing me to use it here on Doug Reads with Friends. Check her out on Spotify. Friends, thank you so much for listening. Thank you again to Jeremy. Thank you to all of you for being my friend, and I'll see you on the next episode.